The natural currents took them straight to North America.
I'm spending money like I just got paid. $100 bills, tell them keep the change. Come on.
Have you ever heard of Herodotus?
Because that's where they went through when they escaped Jerusalem.
Yeah, pop a bottle, about to make it rain. Let me give you something now to celebrate. Come on.
As a convert to the church, to me, this makes a lot more sense.
And if you're wondering why I move the way I do, I just feel so good.
All the ocean currents in the southern part of the southern hemisphere of the Earth go in a counterclockwise rotation. All of the ones in the northern hemisphere go in a clockwise rotation. We know what these ships were like. They were about 60 feet long. They could handle a group exactly the size. In fact, Lehi's group would have been a perfect size for that ship.
The following is an episode of Ward Radio and does not represent the thoughts or the opinions of KHTS, its owners, or any of its affiliates, nor does it represent the official opinion of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. With that said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to Ward Radio. I'm joined today in the studio by Rod Meldrum and Abril Hernandez, and we're talking about a 600 BC boat called the Phoenician that was used in an experiment recently to see whether or not an ancient peoples from the Middle East could indeed make it to the heartland of America in order to discover it, consistent with the theories put forth in the Book of Mormon that lack a geographic model. And the Heartlander of Heartlanders here, Rod Meldrum, now owns the boat and has actually interviewed the captain of said boat. And you guys are touting this along with Brill here as proof positive that the traditional Mesoamerican model of coming out the Red Sea, going past the Saudi Peninsula and through the widest part of the ocean to land on the west coast of Chile or whatever that we see on those old seminary graphs from the 90s and the early 2000s. You're saying that's hogwash and couldn't be, but here's my pushback on this. Okay. I was a seminary teacher. So before the Heartlander thing became a thing, all right, you know what I'm saying?
The thing.
Before Heartlanders like kind of existed as the movement that they are now, and there was this competition between Scripture Central, which is a large apologetic organization online that toes the Mesoamerican model line, and you guys that toe the more North American model line. I was just a little voluntary seminary instructor in Los Angeles, all right? And when I taught this lesson, I love the lesson of Nephi when he makes it to the shore and he builds the ship. Okay. His doubting family members won't help him. Laman and Lemuel, you know, they're the contentious ones. They're the non-believers, so on and so forth. In fact, they've even gone so far as persecuting him, trying to hurt him, trying to beat him, trying to so on and so forth. And finally, the angelic visitation, he demands that they not withhold his labor, and they build this boat. But it says something specific.
They have a shocking experience too.
Yeah, they have a shocking experience. Super awesome boomer dad joke. That was like a solid 8 out of 10. You know what I'm saying?
Sweet.
So anyway,
I usually end up about 7.
Okay. Well, hey, we're generous in the Ward Radio Wigwam. All right. So anyway, what does the scripture actually say? It says that he also had a revelatory experience.
Yes.
That Nephi went to pray and was shown how to build the ship, not after the manner of men.
Right.
And in my lesson as a seminary instructor, I actually pulled up Phoenician boats that had come out of Damascus, that had cruised all over the Mediterranean. And I showed the language that spread amongst the Phoenicians, because the whole reason why we speak, quote, phonetically, end quote, is because the Phoenician letters were spread and incorporated into all the languages. And you notice that all those languages kind of stop a little bit south of the Canary Islands, and they don't go further than the British Isles. Why? Because that's where the trade winds took them, and square sails could notoriously not do really well further than 6 to 8 miles from shore. They relied on directional winds carrying them where they wanted to go. So you had to follow the quote trade winds, end quote. Whereas 200 years later, Latin sails, and they were called Latin sails because the Romans used them, and vulgar Latin, also pronounced Latin at the time, was the language spoken by the Roman sailors that captained these vessels. Okay, that didn't come out until 200 years later. So if Nephi's there and he's given a vision on the boat that he should build, and it specifically says in the scriptures that the boat he was building was, quote, not after the manner of men at the time. And then you guys build a boat that's exactly after the manner of men at the time, not the revelatory boat that Nephi came up with, but actually the boat that was consistent with Phoenicians at the time. Isn't the experiment bad? Because what I taught my seminary students was, hey, look, if you're living your life worthily and you're being humble and you're doing your very best and you solicit help from your Father in heaven through prayer, sometimes you will get these great revelatory experiences that will put you ahead of your time. Like I surmise, and this is just my goofy hat with the propeller on it. This is Doctrine of Ellis right here. You know, I'm just a goofball.
Your pyramid hat?
My tinfoil hat or whatever. I have a feeling that Nephi had a revelatory experience and was shown triangular sailed boats and was able to build a boat that was not after the manner of men and the knowledge of his time, but something almost nearly futuristic, not wildly futuristic, but just ahead of his time.
Right.
So had he built a triangular sailed boat, that can go against the headwinds. That can go against the trade winds, just like anybody that windsurfs. I grew up learning how to windsurf in Florida with my biological father. And you can surf into the wind using triangular sails. So how do we know? You guys are always saying as Heartlanders that, you know, oh, hey, I'm a Heartlander because I take seriously the Book of Mormon. I take seriously the revelations of Joseph Smith and so forth and so on and so forth. Couldn't we now apply that rhetoric to this Phoenician boat experiment and say, hey, your premise is bad because you built a Phoenician boat, not a revelatory Nephite boat. And so the whole thing is flawed and you know, it's kind of like poison in the well logically. What do you got to say to that?
Well, let's break it down.
That's a great question.
All right, let's break it down. So what do we know about the boat? Because we know that...
I'm trying to get that job back from Scripture Central. You know, that last half hour, you know.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I got to say, that was pretty good. Convincing. Okay.
I'm giving you ammo, Jack Welch. I'm giving you ammo.
So a couple of things about the ship. Number one is that it said, like you said, it was a revelatory thing. But we do know that he didn't build a diesel-powered vessel. He didn't build a hydrofoil,
biofuel,
or some kind of
or
some kind of an aircraft carrier. Okay, so we know it was a wooden ship because it said it was built out of wood, and we know it was blown before the wind. So whether or not it could tack is actually irrelevant if it's being blown before the wind, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the type of sail is not there. The thing is if we're going to have the world understand and believe that this is something that could have actually happened, when you start to go into the supernatural, then you lose a lot of people. You say, yeah. So Nephi basically built a hovercraft because that's what the Lord showed him, right? And then he took the hovercraft to America, right?
Yeah.
How many people are going to believe that, right?
Oh, everybody.
So you have
just
to
like those cool little on the History Channel, that one little airplane, the one little Egyptian airplane model, and like they're like light bulb on the side in hieroglyphics. That little hieroglyphic light bulb. Yeah. I bet you there's a freaking hieroglyphic. Just like in Angkor Wat, there's that hieroglyphic stegosaurus. I bet you there's a hieroglyphic hovercraft somewhere.
But the thing is you don't need it. This is the beauty of having something that's logical and makes sense. Because the Phoenicians who are now where did the Phoenician ship? I mean, why did Philip build a Phoenician ship? Well, because the Phoenicians were plying the oceans long before Lehi ever left Jerusalem. I mean, for centuries before.
Okay, yeah, but what about the whole idea that this experiment?
But let's go into the boat.
Is not the revelatory boat. It's just not the revelatory boat. And if the revelatory boat were Latin, triangular sailed, does Captain Bill himself admit that a triangular sailed boat could have crossed the ocean to Mesoamerica?
No, and that's the thing. So the other thing is another technology that the Lord could have given him was a technology that wasn't known at the time of the Phoenicians at 600 BC. It was actually later on, about 1100 AD, is when you start getting the deep keels, where you have the ship comes down, instead of having just a rounded hull, it actually comes down
a big fat keel in the middle.
Puts a big keel in it, and that helps you be able to tack against the winds as well. So it's the combination of a triangular sail and the deep keel. But the thing is they don't need either one of those. Nephi could have just built a ship, now after the manner that wasn't after the manner of men. That could be. I'll tell you, the Phoenician ships, they leak like a sieve. Okay, so
really?
So maybe God showed him a new way that you could connect the wood in such a way.
Make it tight like unto a dish?
It would be tighter like more unto a dish, right? But not a jaredite dish. Okay, so so there's different things that the Lord could have shown him, different kinds of joinery. But we do know that he made a wooden sailing ship. And that's why this is a great analog. Is it a perfect analog? Maybe not. But we know that it was blown before the winds. And then we can get into all the details about why that's important, because which direction are the winds going when they left? What time of the year did they leave?
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at the Book of Mormon. It says that they gathered fruit and honey in abundance, got aboard the ship, and were blown before the winds.
So it had to be in the springtime.
Nope. You don't have fruit or honey in the spring.
Oh, no, it's the fall. You're right.
It's the fall,
'Cause,
right.
Yeah, during the fall is when
And
we
so,
get the...
so doing a deep dive into the weather patterns on the Saudi Arabian Peninsula some years ago, when I did this about a 2-hour presentation about this, which you can also see on our website again, there's basically 2 primary wind currents, and you can look those up. It's actually the southwest monsoons that go over that area.
So what am I Googling? A southwest monsoon calendar? Or what?
Just put Saudi Arabia wind patterns or monsoons.
Okay, Saudi Arabia wind patterns and
in the
monsoons.
spring of the year, in the spring and summer, you have wind pattern that basically goes from the Indian Ocean and it blows to the north and to the east, up into in towards India, the Himalayan mountains. Yeah, that basically shows you kind of that right there.
Cool.
Okay, so you see that right there?
Yep.
Okay, so that's the wind pattern. If you were launching the ship from the southern tip of the southern edge of Saudi Arabia there, the only way you could sail would be north and east, and you can only go so far before you're going to run into land. But if and the other direction though is in the fall of the year, when you have fruit and honey in abundance, the wind patterns switch and actually comes out of India and drops down and goes south and west down along the Saudi Arabian Peninsula and then down along the east coast of Africa.
Oh, interesting.
This is the reason why the Phoenicia ship, which was a 600 BC ship with a square sail, it didn't have any additional technologies. Those technologies would have just helped them along a little bit more.
Look at this graph right here. There's the winter monsoon that is pushing everything down the Saudi peninsula, almost into Yemen, and then down into like Somalia, and then down towards Madagascar,
I've never even seen these graphics before, but it's exactly showing what's going on here. So in the fall of the year, if you sail a ship after you gather fruit and honey in abundance, there's only one direction you're going, unless you're going to claim that God changed all the currents of the earth.
Okay.
Which certainly he has the capability to do that, but it doesn't help our case when you have to basically say that something supernatural happened for this to actually go on.
And also on top of that, like if God did change all the currents of the earth, it would be documented. Right? The Lord himself would have said that this is what he did to get them to the promised land.
Yeah, he just gave him Lehi and said, "Here, follow this."
Well, what if he just forgot? Like they forgot to write down what Samuel the Lamanite said. You know, maybe he just didn't, account for the monsoon season. You know?
And maybe monkeys will. No, just kidding.
Jade jaguars or jungles.
The point is a rational thinking person that looks at the Book of Mormon and says, and this is what Philip Beale did, because he had never heard of the Book of Mormon. And he said, you know what, the natural currents is going to take me down along the east coast of Africa. I'm going to go around the bottom of Africa, the southern tip of Africa. I'm going to come up the west coast, and we're going to show something that history actually shows. And this is what's really cool. Have you ever heard of Herodotus?
Yeah,
of course,
Herodotus,
as a historian, you know him,
philosopher,
right?
Yeah.
Right, he's a Greek philosopher, right? And he wrote a history, and in his history, he actually made the claim. Now, his history was about 500 BC.
Okay.
He made the claim that the Phoenicians, who are these people that we're talking about, and where was Phoenicia based? Basically Lebanon. It's Israel. It's Levant area today, right? He said that these Phoenicians were making circumnavigations of Africa clear back to 100 years before his time, which pushes us all the way back to 600 BC. Mm-hmm. So that's Lehi's time frame. I think it's fascinating to note that when Nephi comes down off the mountain and says, "Hey, the Lord's told me that I'm going to have to build a ship," right? His brother's response wasn't, "What's a ship?"
Or "That's never been done."
Yeah.
Wow.
They said, "No, dude, you're a fool. You think you can build a ship?" I mean, it sounds to me like they had at least some kind of an idea of how difficult shipbuilding was.
You can find that in 1 Nephi chapter 17.
First Nephi chapter 17. Yeah. All right, I'm looking it up.
Our brother thinks he can build a ship. What a fool he is. So it sounds to me like they had at least a pretty good idea that what it would take to build a ship, and they knew that Nephi had no such experience. He had no shipwright building experience, and they're going, man, there's no way that our brother can do this. So that's part of the miracle, actually, of the shipbuilding process. And I love that
Verse
story in the Book
17,
of
if you're
Mormon.
looking for it.
Okay, yeah, here it is. I'm going to put it on the screen just so everybody can see. In verse 17, it says, "And when my brethren saw that I was about to build a ship, they began to murmur against me, saying, Our brother is a fool, for he thinketh he can build a ship. Yea, and he also thinketh that he can cross these great waters."
Yeah.
So okay.
to me, I mean, like from my perspective, as a convert to the church, to answer your question specifically,
Yeah, okay.
to me, this makes a lot more sense.
Well, okay, I'll tell you right now, that winter monsoon versus summer monsoon graph, that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm still not buying the idea that it was a Phoenician ship that Nephi built because of his revelatory experience.
But we're not, from my opinion, and I'm speaking for myself here, is that the proof isn't that the Phoenicia is the ship that they built.
Right.
Okay, it's the proof is that it can be done.
It is that it can be done
with
Even
a ship
using
of
six
its
times.
time.
ship of its time, because this is
Yes.
this ship is contemporary to their time when they lived, which means that when he says you're a fool for trying to build a ship, the closest thing that he can think of a ship would be the Phoenicians,
yeah.
because that's where they went through when they escaped Jerusalem.
Okay. I'm digging, bro.
But what happened after that was just nothing short of just incredible. So they sailed down. Oh, by the way, they had to go through. So I actually found out about it through a friend of mine by the name of Keith Johnson out of Florida. He was actually selected to be one of the crew members that actually was going from Mozambique.
Go Keith.
Mozambique down to the, get this, Comoros Islands.
Ooh, I've heard of those.
Have you heard of a word in the Book of Mormon that sounds sort of, if you want to talk about entomology, this is kind of fun. So,
this is like straight up CES letter anti-Mormon stuff too. Like, just the Captain Kidd novels, and then just, the first book of Napoleon and Solomon Spaulding and Comoros and Moroni. It's
okay,
I'm super smart.
But the interesting thing is that they, in order to go this particular route, they would have had to go past what is today known as the Comoros Islands, which sounds a little like Comoros. I mean, it's similar. Yeah. Okay, but what I find is really fascinating, if you look up the capital city of the Comoros Islands, and I'm just going to spell it for you.
Moroni?
Moroni. It's
okay.
Moroni.
But also there's Moroni, there's Kamoni, there's Bazomai, there's a bazillion other Aroni
what was
renditions.
one of the capitals, one of the primary cities of the Phoenicians there in the Lebanon area? The name comes up, it's called Sidon. Anybody ever heard of the word Sidon before?
There's Tyre and Sidon.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, which is,
wow. How did that show up in America in the Book of Mormon? The primary river system was called Sidon.
So you're making a pretty strong claim here that due to both the winter and monsoon current structures in the ocean, you don't see a way that the Mesoamerican model could have been accomplished without something extraordinary that would have been recorded in scripture.
It's not me that's saying it.
It's not us. It's Captain Philip Beale.
Okay,
the guy that actually did the expeditions.
Yeah.
Okay.
He says it can't be done.
So you're deferring responsibility for your heresy upon an innocent non-member. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, I've been
an expert. I've been an expert witness.
I've been called worse.
Okay, cool. So after cowardly running from your blasphemy, no, I'm just kidding. So you're saying, hey, the math doesn't add up with the winter and the summer monsoon season. But if instead of going to the west coast of the Americas, they go to the east coast, following what would have been the same trade wind systems that most of the transatlantic historical ships. I mean, those were the old
Columbus,
slave trade
Cortez,
routes. Unfortunately, that's also some of the routes that were later discovered. I mean, even people picking up Napoleon from the island that he was exiled to would have gone along these same currents and these same trade winds and so on and so forth. So you're saying instead of taking the Mesoamerican model, which puts him on the west coast of the Americas, he's going on to the east coast by coming and following the monsoon currents around the Cape of Africa. And you think there's etymological clues in the local names of some of the localities there that end up showing up in the Book of Mormon, like Sidon from the Phoenicians, where the boat derived from, and then Comoros, which is an island system. Was it called Comoros in 600 BC, or is that a later name that was added later?
Yeah, we don't know. That's part of the reason why I don't put a lot of weight on the etymology, because it does change over time. I mean, words change.
I mean, so these were Phoenician cities, but they were in Carthage, which is now Tunisia, which is why the Tunisian embassy invited us to come to Washington, D.C. to talk about this.
So did the Mesoamerican people just feel like left out? Because I'm not seeing the Colombian ambassador saying like, hey, can you come and hang out with us?
Well, they never had a ship that
you're
actually
getting these Tunisian babes just like wanting to feed you grapes and baklava. You know what I'm saying? And then like fan you in the embassy with, their interns. And
people.
the poor Mesoamerican guys are just like, hey, can we come down to Guatemala? Well, there's another layer to this, and that layer is that Rome captured Carthage, and they basically burned that city down and erased the entire history. And we all know what happens when a victor takes over, right? They write the history in their way. So there's so much weight to what we're talking about. Oh my gosh,
modern day Tunisia is Carthage.
Yes.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, It's right across from
Italy.
Yeah, the great elephants of Carthage.
It's right off
the invading
Malta.
army. Yeah.
So can you pull up a map if you can of the ocean currents of the world? Okay. Just pull it off.
I'm literally typing in the ocean currents of the world.
And what you'll find is this: all the southern oceans go in a counterclockwise rotation. Yeah, use that one right there in the
middle.
One right there. That's perfect.
That's your confirmation bias that is demanding.
I didn't pull it up. You did.
I know. Well, it's Coastal Wiki.
Okay, so but put that up there, okay, for just a second, so people can see it, because it's really pretty fascinating when you take a look at it. If they go down, if you find find Saudi Arabia, you see the currents, you see the ocean currents. Basically, all the ocean currents in the southern part of the southern hemisphere of the Earth go in a counterclockwise rotation. All of the ones in the northern hemisphere go in a clockwise rotation.
Yeah.
So when you leave the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, you go down the east coast of Africa, and then if you come around the Cape of Good Hope, basically down at the bottom there, you're going to pick up the southern Atlantic currents, which is basically going in a counterclockwise rotation. It's going to take you basically up the west coast of Africa for a little bit, but then it's going to transfer you over
the ocean,
South America. And then by the time you get to the equator again, you're going to be going into the northern hemisphere, and you're going to be coming in
taking the
about
Gulf
the
Stream
same area where everybody knows how the hurricanes and tornadoes hurricanes and typhoons and so forth go up through the Gulf of Mexico, right? So that's the wind currents, that's the natural currents there. So what happened to the Phoenicia, and it's so beautiful if you actually could plot this out. I don't think it's online, but you might be able to pull up the route of the Phoenicia expedition, the first one.
Okay, the Phoenicia.
Yeah, that's it right there.
Oh wow, look at this! You got whole articles written about you guys. Good job, dude.
This thing is huge. I'm telling you, when they would pull into these different ports, like they let me just kind of explain. There's some of the crew and the Phoenicia ship there.
The Phoenicia was built from scratch on the Syrian island of Arwad and based on the wreck of the Jules Verne 7, a merchant galley of the right period. The ship was constructed in Syria using traditional techniques and materials such as Lebanon cedar, Aleppo pine, and olive wood tenons. Wow. Okay, keep going.
And this is how we know what these ships looked like back at 600 BC. Because they've actually found segments of these ships that have been scuttled or sunk in the mud of the Mediterranean. They've been able to find these things archaeologically, pull them up, and they're actually now on display in museums in Europe. So we know what these ships were like. They were about 60 feet long. They could handle a group exactly the size. In fact, Lehi's group would have been a perfect size for that ship. Now, in the expedition, they only had about 15 members on as a maximum. They had as low as 8. But you could sail this ship with between 8 to 10, 12 people, and then you could have cargo. They had 30,000 pounds of steel in the bottom of the ship as ballast. So they could put food and store water and all kinds of stuff in the bottom of the ship. It had plenty for 30, 40 people, which is what pretty close to that was what Lehi's
family
group would have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but this is the coolest thing, though, Carden. You ready for the big?
Okay, you got 60 seconds
finale?
to blow my mind.
Okay.
You got 60 seconds,
big
bro.
finale. Their plan was to go up the west coast of Africa. When they got into the southern Atlantic currents, and we actually got this from the satellite phone, that they would actually beam up their coordinates every few days as we were watching the ship go further and further out into the Atlantic. And the winds and the currents took them straight to North America. They were not trying to get to North America. They were desperately trying to get back to Africa. But because they didn't have the ability to sail against the currents, the natural currents took them straight to North America. If you take the days that they took to do this, and you subtract off the number of days that they were switching crews and picking up food and water and so forth at different places as they stopped along the way, that puts them arriving in America, guess when? If Lehi and his ocean voyage, if they left at 580 BC, whatever it was, 589 BC, it would have put them arriving in America between April the 10th and April the 25th of that year. Literally 6 months later, that the History Channel could not have discounted the church and the Book of Mormon if they would have used this voyage. And there's no way you can deny it because it's actually been done in a 600 BC ship. They literally came to America. And what happened when Lehi and his family arrived in America? What did they do immediately? They planted the seeds.
And they planted the seeds, yeah.
What time of the year was that then?
The planting time, spring.
Spring.
Yeah.
And doing this route, it actually takes them from the Saudi Arabian Peninsula and makes them arrive on the promised land of America right in time for spring planting season. I just find that is absolutely incredible. And we know exactly how many days because it's actually been done in a 600 BC ship. There's no need to.
And not only a 600 BC ship, but a ship that was built in the Middle East with materials from the Middle East.
Okay, you guys present a super compelling argument. I'm ready to be baptized in the waters of Heartlanderism. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm just kidding.
You may become a Cumorah truther as well.
I was about to say I will never be a Heartlander because I think it's just a gross name. It makes me think of chunky noodles or a chunky beef
but it's the
soup,
name of the actual area. If you look up Heartland on Wikipedia,
Cumorah
that's
truther.
what it is.
No, look, the Catholics are the ultimate French Revolution truthers, you know? And here's what you guys lack as a Heartlander movement, okay?
Yeah.
All of these ex-truther organizations, they always have a cool little log line. Like the 9/11 truthers, okay? I don't think everything they say is real, but you know, you can recognize them because they all have in their bios, jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams, you know, and stuff like that, right? Exactly. You know, Heartlander, it just makes me think that's what America has for dinner. You know what I'm saying? Like, Cumorah truther, that's just like exit Mesoamerican, we made it to North America in the Phoenician. Like, you just need to think up a better log line and it's cooler. But anyway, we unfortunately
help us with that. Give us some ideas, man.
I'm still trying to get that job at Scripture Central. Forget you guys. So you know what I'm saying? You guys are too poor, dude. No, I'm just kidding with you.
They'll be gone someday anyway, so not to worry.
Yeah, well, they'll bore us all to death. So anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But I'm not. But I am. So we got to take a little bit of a break right now. This has been real and it's been fun. You guys are listening to Rod Meldrum and Bril Hernandez talking about the Phoenician expedition that made it all the way from basically the Red Sea, following the monsoon currents to North America, consistent with stories told in the Book of Mormon. For this and more, please check us out at wardradio.com.
I just feel so good.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. Before you go, please make sure that you like the video, share it with your friends, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please let this be the video in which we earn your subscription and that you press the alert button so you're alerted to all of our fun live streams and standalone videos and community posts. Also, if you'd like to help us out, please consider joining the channel. Members get all kinds of cool perks and benefits. They get early access to a lot of our videos and special emoticons and emojis during our live streams and preferential treatment there. It's a lot of fun. Speaking of a lot of fun, we have a super cool Discord. If you'd like to join our Discord, check us out on wardradio.com. There's a link to the Discord there. Also, you can sign up there for our newsletter. Our newsletter is a lot of fun, and you can put your email address in there. And if you'd like to contribute to the program, please consider looking us up on Venmo or on the Cash App. We're on both of those platforms. Also, if you just want to keep watching more content, right about here and probably right about here are going to be some more videos. Please check those out. And as always, for this and more, please make sure that you look us up and check us out at wardradio.com.